If I said, okay, well, how much is it to replace a radiator in your car? You're going to be like, dude, I don't know. How much is it if your alternator belt breaks? Unless you just did it recently, you don't know that. So now let's bring it over to dental. Here's where dentists kill themselves. They say, okay, well, I want to charge $250 for a cleaning. And it's like, well, everybody else in your market is charging $99 for the cleaning. And they're like, I don't care. They're cheap. I'm not cheap. And here's the thing that dentists don't understand. You only have to be competitive on like 3, maybe 4 things. The cleaning, the exam and x-ray, and the consultation. That's it. And you don't even have to do all of them. You can just do one at a time if you want.
Welcome back to the Dental Economist Show with me, Mike Huffaker. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by Gary Bird, the founder and managing partner of SMC National. Since founding the company in 2010, Gary has steered SMC National to become a powerhouse in dental marketing. His journey is marked by an unwavering commitment to growth, not just as a business objective, but as a way of life. Welcome to the show, Gary. How you doing?
Super excited to be on today. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation. And I'm excited. I think I have you scheduled on my podcast, Dental Marketing Theory, very soon.
Yes, absolutely. I think we're going to record that next week. So I'm excited to be in the chair on the other side. It'll be my first time. So hopefully you'll take it easy on me.
Yeah, it'll be fun. You'll do great.
All right. So I got to ask before we kind of get into like the serious conversations here. One, have you received your Cybertruck yet? And
No.
2, how many times have you checked the Bitcoin price today?
So I haven't received my Cybertruck yet. I check it every day to see if I got the update from them or not. And then Bitcoin, I've literally probably checked 40 times today. As I worked out, I had Bitcoin on my phone and I had a podcast about Bitcoin playing as I was working out with the price of Bitcoin that I just sat there and watched as I was working out.
Oh, that's awesome. They sell on Amazon these almost like a clock that you can get that it basically just updates the price of Bitcoin and that's it, like in a digital reading. And I was like, maybe I'll just get one of those, throw it on the shelf in the back, and then don't have to open my phone so often. But today's been a good day to check the price of Bitcoin.
So we got 2 things going on. One, Bitcoin's absolutely flying today. I think it was just kissed up to all-time highs. And yeah, it's at $71,747. Got up to 70, almost 73 again. And in about 15 minutes, I think the solar eclipse, or 10 minutes, the solar eclipse is going to happen here in California.
That's right. I'm in Arizona, and we get actually an even better view of the eclipse from here. So I've got some team members. Actually, I think the office is empty right now. It was on the calendar for everybody to go outside and go stare at the eclipse, but peak time's like 30, 40 minutes from now. And no Cybertruck yet.
I've been waiting for 5 years, so it's like whatever at this point. What's in a couple more months?
Yeah, if you can see behind me, I've got this little toy Cybertruck.
Ooh, that's so cool.
My wife bought that for me for Christmas a year ago. She goes, "You're not getting that thing anytime soon. This is the closest you're going to get to the Cybertruck. So here, I'm just going to buy you one." I was like, "Well, thank you, dude."
That's so cool.
It was very kind of you. So, all right, well, let's get into marketing. To start, can you talk me through your career a little bit, and maybe a little bit how your motivations have changed along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got into dental marketing on accident. So one of the questions that I ask on my podcast, Dental Marketing Theory, to everybody is how you got into the dental industry. And so it's interesting. Dentists and hygienists are all here on purpose. All of them. Like their family member or a very close friend or relative brought them into the dental industry, kind of showed them the life, and then they decided to go to school for it and make it their life career. And so that's very intentional. Everybody else that I've talked to is here by accident or their family was in dental and dragged them into it, right? So that's everybody. It's insane. It's like 99%. And so I'm just like everybody else. I ended up here on accident. I was doing marketing. One day a dentist approached us because we were crushing it for one of their friends. And they brought us an opportunity. They were doing about $90,000 a month. They went up over a couple of years span. They went up to about $450,000 a month. We still work with them as our first dental client that we worked with. They crushed it. Like they did really, really well. They referred us to a bunch of people. We eventually decided just to do dental, and we slowly over time built up. COVID, we lost about 75% of our business overnight because everybody shut down. Like everybody just turned off their marketing because they weren't open. And so that crushed us. We took out a bunch of loans, decided to stay open. We 5x the business over the next couple of years. We actually made the Inc. 5000 list 3 years in a row, fastest growing companies in the United States. And that's big because we're in only dental. So that's like, we're in this like little market, yet we're growing as fast as we got all the way up into the 2000s, the last one. And so that was really, really cool. And growth is something that's really important to me. I think you're either growing or dying. Our company Y is always growing, and we want to be growing. We want our clients to be growing. We want their teams to be growing. We want our team to be growing as well, personally and professionally. So I believe that if you're not growing, you're dying. That's especially true in business. And so for me personally, something that I've applied over the last 5 or 6 years is just every year I do something that's really hard and scary, intimidating, and high likelihood of failure. And so I try to do that once every year. That's something I just think that's really, really important. As far as like our clients and things like that, what most people don't understand about dental marketing right now in the current state is you have a high demand from the patient side, from the consumer side. You have a low supply from the dental side. And then you have these operating issues in between those two things. And so there's never been a better opportunity to grow a dental practice, but at the same time, it comes with major complications. And right now, the average dental practice. So I recently did a podcast with Dental Intel, and we were looking at all the numbers of the dental industry of their 10,000 clients, and just like talking about it. And you have like the top 10% of dental offices that do really well. You have the bottom 10% that like are horrible, and then you have this like 80% middle class. And the 80% middle class is just like slowly dying, and just like in the economy of the United States. And one thing that we've noticed is that middle 80% are the average, and those average, they're losing 80% of their marketing budget before the patient gets to their door. And it's simple math. It's not complicated. Anybody can understand it, but it's invisible. I call it the black hole of marketing. And so what we're seeing is that the average dentist in America today is not answering their phone. I want you to take a guess at what percentage they don't answer their phone. Do you know this?
I am going to imagine that whatever I guess, it is going to be a significantly higher percentage than my guess. And so I'm going to guess what I would hope that it was, maybe somewhere in like the 10% of calls being missed. And I'm anticipating that your answer is going to be that it's a lot more.
So most dentists say we miss 0 to like 1% of our calls. And this is false. This is what they say. This is what they think it is. So for your listeners, I'm playing this game with you. Thank you for playing along, Mike, because your audience is going to go, no, we don't miss in calls. I actually met with a doctor yesterday, and he said, we're not missing that many calls. And I said, okay, here's the data that I have. Show me the data that you have. He goes, I use my ears. I'm like, your ears can't be your data. That doesn't work, doc. You need actual numbers, right? And so it's the industry average. And if you don't know this number as you're listening, you're going to fall in the average, is 35%. 35% of new patient calls, or all calls, go unanswered during normal business hours. Now, we're not talking about after hours. We're talking about normal business hours. And that's a big problem because your marketing calls are mixed up with that. And so what a lot of offices say is, oh, we'll just call them back. But we all know what happens when a marketing patient goes to Google, types into Google dentist near me, and pulls you up, and you don't answer, they call the next office and then the next office. And if you don't believe me, just call your office, block your cell phone, *67, call your office and watch. Just call 10 times today and watch how many times it goes unanswered. That's going to give you your answer, what your average is, right? And so, okay, so that's the first one. So if you're spending $10,000 on marketing, you just lost $3,500 of that by just not answering your phone.
What do you think is achievable? Like, if everybody thinks that they answer all their calls, and maybe it's 1%, obviously there's lots of scenarios that come in. What's the target? What are you shooting for?
Below 10% is very realistic. Now you need solutions though. Here's the interesting part about phones. This is a really good question, by the way. The interesting thing about phones is that everybody calls at the same time, and it usually correlates when you put your team off on a break. So you're missing mass volumes of calls in like an hour window when you're least staffed because you let your team go off to lunch. You need to look at the volume of your calls, which is usually going to be at that like 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock, somewhere in there. That's going to be a lot of your calls. And then at the end of the day, towards the end of your business hours. So you need to, first of all, put all your breaks outside of those volumes, especially of the people who are answering the calls. Okay, that's number one. Number two, you need more support during those times. If you only have one front desk person and 3 people call, you can only take one of those. That's all that's humanly possible, right? So it's not a skill set problem that we're talking about here. It's not a capability problem. It's a capacity problem. So you need to support the capacity. The other things that you can do is you can also hire out to some of these like third party. We use companies like TEEM. They'll help you hire somebody for like $1,500 a month, and you train them just like your team, and they'll answer the phones during your slower times. Then there's other companies like Reach. They used to be called Call Force. If you're doing GP, they'll answer the flow over. So if you don't answer the calls, if let's say you get 10 calls at once, they'll answer all your overflows that don't get answered. And they just charge you per call. And it's very straightforward, like very, very easy. And it's like, well, do they answer it as good as my team? And da-da-da. No, but they're answering it and they're scheduling patients, right? So that's better than losing it 100%. And so that's the hack right there. So those are the simple solutions that you can do right there. And so you can definitely get there though. I've seen people do it. You can get below 10%. But the big battle is not getting below 10%. The big battle for me is getting doctors realize that they're missing 35% of their calls to begin with or more. Okay, so the next thing is now when you do answer the phones, now this is actually a capability problem, not a capacity problem. The average conversion of a marketing new patient is about 50%. Qualified marketing patient. I don't mean Medicaid. When you don't take Medicaid, of course you don't convert those, right? I'm talking about somebody who's qualified to come into your office. They're from your area. They want the treatment that you offer from the area that you want them, and your team doesn't know how to answer their questions. And there's only like 4 basic questions that patients ask, but the team just isn't equipped to answer that. So you got to solve that problem next.
You said 50%. 1 out of every 2 of that criteria that you just laid out. Like, I live near the dentist. I need a dentist. I want to see a dentist. And it doesn't turn into me visiting that dentist.
Doesn't turn out to you even scheduling with that dentist. We're just talking about schedule. We haven't even got to show rate and all those kind of things yet. So if you just take those 2 statistics, 35% on the phones, 50% conversion on the phones, you've lost close to 80% of your opportunities. But it's invisible to you because you say, no, my team converts better than 50%. But here's where the problem comes in. They're looking at conversion of all new patients, not just marketing new patients. All new patients, patient referrals, doctor referrals, those converted about 100%. The marketing patients converted about 50% unless you get training and your team's held accountable. So that's a huge problem. What we just described is you've just lost 75, 80% of your marketing budget just on that alone. And this is why dentists hate marketing and hate working with marketing companies.
So what do you do to solve this? And is this something that SMC National is part of your approach is like, look, you can do this marketing. We can get your phones ringing. We can get people coming to the front door, but it doesn't matter if you're failing at either answering the call or converting when they do. Is this part of your offering?
Yes, great question. So yes, so we won't market for anybody unless we're tracking their phones, number one. And what does that mean? We can see unanswered calls. We can also see how each team member is performing with the marketing calls. How are they doing when it comes to converting those calls? And we can see that very, very clearly. And then we have coaching that goes along with that when they're failing and how they're failing. So that's otherwise everybody fails. Like it's just there's the edge cases, the horrible offices, and then the really, really good offices. But the 80%, everybody else fails, and the marketing's just a waste of time. And this is why actually for the dentist listening, this is why you get that feeling where you go, wait a second. I spent all this money on marketing. I'm getting all these new patients to schedule. Like I feel like there's new patients on the books, but then it comes to the day and there's not a lot of new patients available, right? There's these gaps in my schedule. And then I get to the end of the month and we don't grow. The reason you're not growing, you're hitting a glass ceiling. You're spending money to grow, but really it's just getting washed down the drain, but it's really hard to see. Unless you're working with SMC or somebody like us, there's nobody who's tracking these kind of numbers. Unanswered call rate, marketing conversion, and then marketing show rate, and then average dollars of treatment accepted on the first visit from marketing patients. That's very nuanced. And you're not going to get that in most of your dashboards because they're not tracking top of funnel activities. They're tracking bottom of funnel activities, and then they aggregate all that data together. And then so it's like mixing your patient referrals with your marketing patients. I was talking to Dental Intel, and they already said, oh, the show rate for all patients is this. And I'm like, what was marketing show rate? And it's like, oh, that's a different stat. And it's harder to comb that out than all of your patients. Does that make sense?
Yeah, attribution is really challenging, and it's going to be really hard to measure that if you're also not even maybe tracking that data in the first place. I'd be curious as to your perspective. So, people go home at the end of the day, and you don't have people answering your phone 24/7. At least most practices do not. How does the ability to self-schedule for a patient play into the game plan or roadmap that you would lay out for a practice?
Online scheduling is huge. Yeah. And that converts at a very high ratio. However, you still have to have a human connection behind that. So what I mean by that is that there's four, and I mentioned this before, there's four basic questions you have to know how to answer. And every patient's going to come in with one of them from marketing. Now, patient referrals don't do this, because let's pretend, Mike, that you tell me, go visit this doctor office. They're amazing. This is the best dentist in the world. You have done the selling. So if I call that office and they don't answer, I call back. If I call, I'm not going to have a bunch of questions. I'm just like, hey, I just want to book a new patient's spot. You got anything available? If you book me 3 weeks out, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to show up, right? Because Mike told me it was awesome. So I'm going to go. And I'm going to accept more treatment too, because I already trust Mike. And Mike told me this place is awesome. There's less friction for the office. This is why doctors say, I love these kinds of patients. I want more like this. They don't realize that they just want more referrals. But to get more referrals, you have to get more marketing leads. And you got to turn those into patients to turn those into referrals. So there's a little bit of a cat and mouse game there. But going back, so there's four main questions that you got to answer. Number one is, do you take my insurance? And that one's simple, right? And I know what all the fee-for-service offices are saying. Nope, we don't take any insurances. Don't say that. You lose everybody. You have to say, hey, is it a PPO? And this works for almost every office. There's some edge cases, but hey, is it a PPO? I think so. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, we participate with all PPOs, and we'll help you out with that. Let's do a beneficiary. We'll do a benefits check for you, but let's get you scheduled. That's it. That's all. No, most patients don't call and say, "Are you in network?" and grill you on that, right? And if they do, just tell them the truth. So most people are just going to say, "Hey, do you accept my insurance?" Okay, so that's number one, an insurance question. Number two is, do you do this kind of treatment? Invisalign, implants, whatever it is, right? They just want to know, do you do that? And that one's pretty simple. Everybody kind of knows how to do that. The next one is how much? What's it going to cost to do? I want Invisalign. How much is it going to cost? I want implants. And this is where doctors get hung up, because they train their team that people are asking these questions are shoppers. And it's like, well, yeah, they are shoppers, but every patient is a shopper, just like every dentist is a shopper. Every dentist that uses you guys or uses me shops us first. And doesn't make them bad customers. It just makes them that they're looking for value. So every patient is going to ask this question. Now, here's the trap. If you answer the question, you lose. And if you don't answer the question, you lose too. So what I mean by that is that if you say, oh, yeah, dental implants are $5,000, they're just going to go find somebody, and then somebody's going to say, oh, we do dental implants for $99. But we know that they're not counting the abutment, they're not counting the bone grafting, et cetera, right? There's a sleight of hand happening there. So they end up with a dishonest office. So you don't want to quote treatment that they may or may not need. We really don't know. Do they need jaw surgery, or is it just going to be, or a lot of bone grafting, or is it just a simple implant? Like, we don't know. So we don't want to give the prices. But at the same time, if you say, and this is what most offices do, I'm sorry, we don't give any prices over the phone, instant distrust. It's like, why? Why don't you give prices? That's weird. Are you trying to hide something from me? Are you really, really expensive?
You're afraid of embarrassment. You're afraid you're going to go in and you're going to sit down, and the treatment that you want is going to cost way more than you can afford. And if somebody would have just been more upfront with you, you would have saved yourself that embarrassing experience.
100%. So here's how you do it. Here's how you answer the question. You answer it with another question. Hey, that's a great question, Mike. Could you tell me a little bit more about your problem, so that way to make sure that I get it accurate and don't give you some pricing that's not going to work with you? Is your tooth impacted? How many roots does it have? Are you going to need bone grafting? And the patient's going to say, I don't know. And you go, you know what? That's totally fine. Most patients don't know this stuff. It's impossible this is going to protect your office from them going somewhere else. No office can give you pricing over the phone without this basic information. It would be irresponsible of them. So our doctor understands that. So we have a free exam and x-ray. Let's get you in. We'll take a look at it. And then we'll tell you from there what works better for you, morning or afternoons. So you didn't tell them no and you didn't tell them yes. You just ask more questions, and you can create a list for your front desk for everything. Hey, I need a filling. How much is it filling? Great. How many surfaces is it on? Right? You can do for everything. And it works. Now, if someone answers these questions on the phone, they're not a patient. They're a doctor calling your office, price checking you. And I've heard those calls. So that's the other one. And then the last question is when can you get me in? You want to be able to get patients in within 72 business hours. That's kind of the going rate right now.
So out of those, the question number 3 is the one with the nuance, where the training needs to take place and where people have the biggest difficulty in kind of overcoming that portion of the 4 questions that a patient asks.
The insurance one needs more mental work from the office, because it's not so much scripting, like you could do it. I just gave you the scripting and you would knock it out of the park. But it's more that we have to mentally undo some things, because the doctor has accidentally in the past complained in front of their staff about this insurance not doing this thing or that thing. And so what they end up doing is they just go, nope, we don't accept that insurance. Nope, we don't. And the patient hangs up and goes to the next office, but they don't realize they just lost 20, 30% of their opportunities. And there were some really good opportunities in there because the patient needed other things done besides just the filling or whatever. And now they're going to another office and you lost that. So that one's more psychological with the office to overcome than the scripting. But yeah, I would say between those two, those are the 2 big ones.
We're talking about making sure that you're measuring top of funnel, and the fact that that's not something that is easy to do, one, which is, why so many folks use SMC National and bring marketing agencies in, because it is a challenge to track that. When you're driving new leads, what creates the challenges in attribution in a dental practice? Is it a systems issue? Is it not having the right technologies in place? Is it not working with a partner like yourself? Like what are all kind of the components? I know it's a loaded question. There's a lot that goes into it, but simplify as much as you can.
Yeah, we'll make it really, really simple. So most of the dental industry is built on the back of PMSs, and the PMS is clinical focused. Very, very simple, right? So no one built a PMS and started building a PMS and said, let's go talk to the marketing people. It doesn't ever work that way. They go, let's go talk to dentists. So dentists load the PMS up with things that they want in it, and rightfully so. That's what it's for. But let me ask you a question. What happens when the patient reaches out to the office and says, hey, do you accept my insurance? And you go, no, and you hang up. Where does that patient live? They never even made it in the PMS, right? No patient record. What if they schedule and then they no-show? Or let me give you a really good one. What if they schedule and then they reschedule and the person just moves it over on the calendar? You don't even have a record of that because they're not even a patient yet, right? And so the PMS does an amazing job of bottom of funnel, as it's supposed to do, but you don't have any top of funnel. Everything's just kept in like email, text, and voicemail and DMs, right? And so it's like impossible to even manage. So what we do is we begin to organize all that information, and then we break it down by, first of all, marketing. Like, did this come from marketing or is this a patient referral? So we break it into those 2 buckets immediately, or some other kind of marketing, digital marketing versus postcard or billboard or whatever, television. And then so we segment those first. Then second, we see what bottlenecks are holding back your team. Because it might just be as simple as Susan doesn't know how to answer the phone. Let's just train Susan. Or it might be you have a chat on your website or a form on your website and your team never gets back to them. And it might be that simple. Like, hey, we've gotten 20 form leads this month. You haven't scheduled or touched any of them. Let's just remove the form from the website. You're clearly too busy for these. And so removing these bottlenecks, then all of a sudden now you start to open up the floodgate and allowing these opportunities to come in. Then the next challenge is, hey, we noticed that your average time to appointment is 4 weeks. Guess what? You're going to have like a 50% no-show rate for these marketing new patients when you put them out that far. That's why you keep loading new patients. It looks like you're busy, and then you get to the day of, and they're all disappearing. The reason why is you're putting them too far out. And so it's like you're in this catch-22. So how do we solve that? Well, you got to block schedule. You got to artificially open up spaces on your calendar, or you got a sidecar book. And there's debate about which one's better. It really depends on the office and your desire to basically run an airport or not, right? Like, it's like you want to double book some of these patients where it's like, hey, we know 20% of these people are going to no show. So let's start stacking some of them. And then let's have a plan of how we're going to manage it. That's a lot more complicated. The easier way to do it is just block schedule, get people in right away. And then you don't have to worry about it. If you get people in same day, next day, and then you take care of their problem same day, next day, all of a sudden everything just starts working.
And you'll create very loyal patients also. Incredibly frustrating from a consumer or patient perspective when you can't get into the dentist, or if you have to reschedule your hygiene appointments, you've got to jump on an airplane and the next one that's available is weeks and weeks and weeks out. Not speaking from personal experience or anything like that when that occurs. So,
man, I just had that happen. Yeah,
it's frustrating. It's like, well, I'm happy for you guys that you're so busy that, you don't really need my business because you can't see me for a month or so. But at the same time, from my experience, it's not great. So let me ask you, when you're working with emerging DSOs or groups, would you recommend that people implement a call center?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So there's a lot of mixed reviews on this. So what I've been taught, and this is not a marketing question usually, this is more of a P&L question. Okay. So what happened there is everybody started recommending for a long time, yes, open up call centers, right? But what they didn't talk about is that the amount of labor that you have to hire to do that, and the building that you have to buy to do that, and the equipment and the hours worked and all that kind of stuff instantly devalues your profitability. It brings down the value of your organization, and it takes years and years of scale to actually get rid of that. And it might be a lot longer. And I was taught this by like people way smarter than me. You might not even be wanting to build that far out, right? So you might be building a call center at 20 locations, or I've even seen people try to do even smaller than that. And it's like, okay, you're building a call center. You realize the amount of labor that you have to do that, and the disconnect that creates from your office, right? And I've seen a lot of people backpedal on this now. And now you see people at the office actually doing the scheduling again. So now if you're like, no, I want to build to 1,000 locations, and that's our goal, and we're just going to keep our head down and do it, then yeah, then it starts to make more sense because you will start to make some of that back up. But it does create problems. Like, it creates a lot of problems taking the phones and the patient away from the office, because when the patient no shows, the office has no idea why or what's going on. They're totally disconnected from that patient. So
at the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned kind of the high level dental industry. There's supply and demand, Econ 101, and that there's, a lot of demand and maybe not as much supply as is needed, but then yet there's still the 10% that are struggling for whatever reason, the 80% that are in the middle, 10% on the top. So when you're looking at helping somebody or working with a group, what type of creative strategies do you recommend for DSOs to stand out in the marketplace? I mean, it's clearly not a zero-sum game, right? Like, everybody in theory should be able to be successful here and to be able to run good businesses right here.
There's enough opportunity. Yes, there's enough opportunity in almost every market. So there's some small markets that are exceptions, like really rural areas. But yeah, every market, there's plenty of opportunity. So my answer, if you would have asked me this 5 years ago, totally different answer. But today, average time to appointment. If I would open a dental, like, let's say you and I partnered and we say we're going to open a dental office, I would say our competitive advantage is we're going to get patients in same day, and we're going to do treatment same day, and we're just going to have extra rooms and extra docs and hygienists, and we're just going to do whatever it takes to make that happen, because that will set us apart from everybody else, because almost everybody's gotten away from that. And if you don't believe me, just go try to schedule a hygiene appointment. And I actually do this. I'm weird. I love dental, and I actually do this on myself. You can go see my Facebook post about this recently. I went to a DSO. They have over 1,000 locations, or almost 1,000 locations. They're like the third biggest DSO in the United States. I'm not going to say who they are. They're more DSO ran. Okay, I'll just say that. And they have some of the best systems, I would say. And the reason I say that is that the DSO has set up the systems. It's not like doctor-led where the doctor can choose their own systems, so to speak. So I went, scheduled, big office, 4 doctors, scheduled a hygiene appointment. They got me in right away. I was like, oh, this is cool. Okay, they're going to get me in within 4 days. This is great. So I go in. They say I had to wait 45 minutes past my appointment time. And then the doctor did my cleaning. And I was asking them, I was like, hey, so how many hygienists do you have to support these 4 doctors? We have 1 right now. And I said, are you using temps? Nope. We're just having the doctors do the cleanings, which I know the doctors do not love because that means they're losing out on production time. So that's the problem. That's the bottleneck, right? Like I had somebody tell me online, they were like, I didn't say the name of the DSO because I didn't want to trash them, or whatever, but you can figure it out who it is if you want. They said, tell them to use our services. I'm like, this is not a 100 location. This isn't a 50 location. This is not a 20 location. This is a big DSO. If they're struggling with this, then it means everybody else is. So then it goes back to like, if you learn to keep your team and you can keep your team around and keep your schedule open, you instantly have a competitive advantage over everybody else because the consumer behavior is going to continue to be consumer behavior. I want it right now. Can you get me in right now?
Absolutely. So look, there's been a lot of changes in digital marketing approaches over the years, and just in marketing approaches, period. What basic like principles of marketing do you still believe hold true?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that doctors really fight on and they really hurt themselves on is basic call to actions or basic like economic price points. And what I always do is I always use like oil changes. So where are you at? What part of the country are you in?
I'm in Phoenix.
Phoenix. So how much is an oil change in Phoenix?
That's about $60.
$60. So you know that right off the top of your head. Mike, would you ever pay $150 for an oil change?
No.
Doesn't matter how good they are. Doesn't matter. Now, let me ask you a question, Mike. Do you think they're making money on that $60 oil change with the tech, the oil, the labor, the insurance, the cost of the building? Do you think they're making money on that $60?
They have to be. Absolutely.
Okay, so you think that they're making a profit on $60. So the tech probably costs.
Now I see where you're going.
The tech
with
probably
this.
costs $30 an hour.
Yep.
So that's $30. The oil probably costs what, $20?
Sure.
And then rent and insurance and workers' comp in those places are expensive.
Yeah, you got me. They're making money off of the call that I get before I pick up the car on all the other things that I need to do.
Yes, it's called a loss leader. It's a very basic in the business industry, right? It's called a loss leader, and it's like, okay, we're gonna price this, and the market prices it. So in Phoenix, it's 60, and somebody else's market it might be 90, and my market it might be 40. Whatever it is, you're not gonna pay double that. You'll pay $10 or $15 more, but you're not gonna pay double or triple that, right? You'd be stupid to do that. That doesn't make you cheap. It doesn't make you a bad customer. It's just supply and demand and the cost of goods in that market. Now, if I said, okay, well, how much is it to replace a radiator in your car? You're going to be like, dude, I don't know. How much is it if your alternator belt breaks? Unless you just did it recently, you don't know that. So now let's bring it over to dental. Here's where dentists kill themselves. They say, okay, well, I want to charge $250 for a cleaning. And it's like, well, everybody else in your market is charging $99 for the cleaning. And they're like, I don't care. That they're cheap. I'm not cheap. And then they run marketing, and then here's what they do. None of my marketing's working. My marketing sucks. No, you priced yourself out of the market. And here's the thing that dentists don't understand. You only have to be competitive on like 3, maybe 4 things. The cleaning, the exam and x-ray, and the consultation. That's it. And you don't even have to do all of them. You can just do one at a time if you want. You can be in the top 1% most expensive for everything else because no one knows how much a crown is. No one knows how much a filling is. No one knows how much an extraction is. Unless they've done it recently, they have no clue. So when you get the call from the mechanic and they go, hey, we did your oil change. Hey, just so you know, I don't even know that much about cars, all your belts or all your thing, it's going to be $1,500. And if you don't do it, here's what it's going to run the risk. You're going to blow your motor. It's going to be tens of thousands of dollars to fix it. We really recommend it. And then you have a choice to do it or not do it at that point. It's very straightforward. Dentistry is exactly the same. The business model of dentistry is exactly the same. And so what happens is these doctors will go spend tons of money and the marketing company doesn't tell them because they're like, whatever, my job's just to spend your money. And then they don't get any results. And then they're like, I don't realize why. And I don't want cheap patients. Now, the only exception to this is if you're in if you want high income patients and you're in a low income area, yeah, you can't run a $99 cleaning because the low income people will come and they don't have money to afford treatment. So the question isn't shoppers versus non-shoppers or cheap patient versus non-cheap patient. The real question is Is your office in a location or nearby location where people with income who can afford your services are going to come? That's it. Like, that's the question. So we actually build these maps. So to illustrate this, what we do is we build a map. We put the office on the map. We put the incomes on the map, broken down by high, low, and medium, and then populations, and then competitions. And then we take their historic new patients, but on that map, and then we can see really clearly, look, we don't want patients from over here. We do want patients from over here. You've either been really good at getting them there from there, or you haven't. And then we just reverse engineer that and then focus the marketing on that.
That's very cool. I'm curious, do most of the dental practices that you work with, in the software world and many other worlds, we call it an ideal customer profile, maybe it's ideal patient profile. Do many of them already have that defined where they're like, we know who we want to be coming into our office and we know how we want to go after them?
No, and the reason why is the doctor defines it by their clinical skill set that often don't align with the patient knowledge of what they're actually looking for. So there's only so many things that the patient is really looking for. And I'll give you a perfect example. Dentists say, I want cosmetic patients. Now, I know exactly what they mean when they say that. They're looking for like veneers and aligners and like the combination, and maybe some implants in there, and kind of combining that together for like a $7,000 to like $15,000 patient treatment package, right? But patients don't search like that. They don't search cosmetic dentists. They just don't. That's dentist talk, right? And so they're looking for veneers or smile makeovers or these different terms. Once you have those terms and you understand those terms, then you have to reverse engineer that and say, okay, this is a working female, 25 to 35, one kid, not married, this income bracket, da 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 da. Now you have it, and then now you can go look on that map that I was describing to you. But most practices just go, oh yeah, I just want more cosmetic patients, or I just want more implant patients. They don't really understand looking at it from a market standpoint.
I should have tracked on the loss leader piece. When I was in college, I worked at Nordstrom for years in the men's shoe department. And we had these couple of really big sales, and one of them was like the annual anniversary sale. And we had the New Balance dad shoes that were like $35 a pair. And they were always the loss leader. Like, hey, we're going to load you up. You're going to have every size in this. You can get every middle-aged dad from 1,000 miles away to walk into our store here in Santa Barbara. And you're going to need to sell them more than those shoes because we can't stay open if that's all they buy. But that is absolutely the approach. So I want to touch base on a couple things before we wrap up here. And I really appreciate the time. A lot of great information here. Where do you go to learn? I get the sense that you are probably a reader or an audiobook guy, definitely podcasts. Like, can you share a few of your favorite sources of education?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely podcast. I listen to things. I'm not the best reader in the world. I do read books occasionally, but usually on audiobooks, I listen to them as I'm doing something else. I'm like extreme ADHD. So I have to be like active and then listening at the same time. Or I can read like short spurts of little books here and there if I'm like physically reading and highlighting it. So and retaining it. So that's how I get most of my stuff done, is either audiobooks or podcast where I just listen to it. That's definitely my number one source.
Any podcasts on marketing other than yours that you would recommend that you listen to, or and a dental in general?
Dental's so niche, right? Like the principles don't apply to general marketing because most marketing now is like geared towards like SaaS companies and stuff like that, which is like branding, Tesla, Apple, those kind of things, right? And you are really a local service provider is really what it boils down to. And so that changes all the rules of it. But if I was going to say one person that like generally understands these nuances is like a Seth Godin is really, really good with this. And he has like just basic foundational principles around marketing that you need to understand. Like, no, branding and lead gen are two totally different things. You can build an amazing brand and grow your business that way. However, that stinks for dental because if you have 10 locations, you have to do that for all 10 locations. It's really, really hard to do that. And so there's some lead gen that you have to work in. Lead gen's trackable. You can measure it, et cetera, et cetera. So he's really good. But again, he's going to say things that don't agree with dental. And if you try to execute, I just want to give a buyer's warning. If you try to go down that road, it just doesn't work. Another one is like Alex Hermosi is really good with a lot of his marketing and lead gen stuff. Again, all the principles don't apply to dental, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. But some of the principles about running a business really fit into some of the things that people would want to do in dental. So
you also mentioned doing something hard with a greater than 50% chance of failure. I read a book a year ago called Comfort Crisis. Are you familiar with that one?
I haven't read that book. No, it sounds good though. I love the title.
There's actually a term for that. It's a Japanese term, and I can't find it right now, but it's really neat, and it ties into doing like that difficult item. What, if you don't mind sharing, have been a couple of your recent ones?
Yeah, I'll give you the exact. So I started first. It was like, I'm going to post 3 videos a day on my personal social media, even if I don't have anything to say. And everybody says this, like, I don't care what other people think. Try posting 3 videos a day, and all of a sudden you realize you do care what people think.
You know what though? One of your videos, I remember, it was right before the Super Bowl, and you were like catching balls, and you had the Chiefs and the Niners. You run around your neighborhood, so like it was memorable. I do remember that, and I was like, gosh, I actually respect Gary a lot for going out there, and it's like, I'm just gonna put myself out there and make some videos and do some stuff and try some new things, because like that's hard.
It's super hard. Like that's 4 years. The video that you just referenced is 4 years after I'm just going to start posting 3 videos a day. So you have to get over like caring what other people think. And we all care. That's the big thing. We all say we don't care, but we all care a lot. We like a lot. And I challenge anybody who says, I don't care what other people think, to post 3 1-minute videos on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, wherever, every single day. So that was my first challenge. Then the next year was to start a podcast, which I was scared to death. I really respect like you and like other people who do this, because it's really scary and hard. Like, what are we going to talk about? Are people going to listen? All those things go into our brain. So that was the second thing that I did. And then the next one that I did after that was launch an in-person event. And it's same thing, but now the stakes are way higher. Launching a podcast, yeah, you lose a couple $1,000 if you quit. Launching an in-person event, you lose tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if people decide not to show. And then after that was like virtual events and learning those and things like that. And then the next one, the one I'm in right now as we're talking, is I'm learning LMSs, learning management systems. I'm learning how to build them, how to get people to use them, and how to make them super valuable to both our team, our clients, and then people who may just watch them as a standalone. So that's my big thing right now that I'm working on, that I knew nothing about LMSs when I started building them. Nothing, like zero. So it was very like intimidating. I'm literally a dummy. You could have said anything and you knew more than me instantly about LMSs.
No, that's awesome. Well, that really aligns with kind of your focus on growth. Last question, then we'll wrap. You mentioned in 2020 that COVID, everything went through a really tough time. You also have said that if you're not growing, you're dying. And in that moment, and for a period of time, it sounds like your business was dying and that it was definitely struggling. You had to go and kind of re-up and reinvest in yourself in order to get where you are now. And you 5X, you made the Inc. 5000 list, all this great kind of story of overcoming adversity. What gave you the confidence in that moment or during that window to reinvest in yourself and to say like, nope, I'm going to make this happen, versus like, maybe I'm going to take an alternative path. I'm going to close up. I'm going to go do something else. Like, what was it, do you think, that kind of drove you during that time?
What are my other options? You know what I mean? So what else am I going to do?
Well, marketing, it doesn't necessarily have to be dental. You could go and try in other industries. You could go do something else.
Dental is very interesting. So there's a couple rules to dentistry. Everybody's here by accident, except for the dentist and hygienist. And the other thing that I've learned, anytime someone tries to leave dental after they've been in for some time, they always end up back here. Like, I've seen people from medical try to jump over in dental and see them really struggle. I've also seen people try to leave dental and go over and it's like they always end up back. So I have this weird thing in my head that I'm just supposed to be in dental, and I have so much unique knowledge, like weird niche knowledge, that I literally can't talk to anybody about besides people in dental, that doesn't apply anywhere else. So that I don't know. Maybe it's just I've told myself that story so many times, but this is where I'm supposed to be, and this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and it's working. So I'm just going to keep doing it. It was that simple. That's
awesome. Hey, Gary, I really appreciate you being on the show. Can you share with everybody where they can find you, socials, websites?
If you want to learn more about SMC, it's smcnational.com. And if you want to follow me on social, it's the Gary Bird on whatever platform you're on.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Thanks, man.
The Dental Economist Show is brought to you by Planet DDS. To find out more about how cloud-based dental software by Planet DDS helps unleash dentists and their staff to focus on patient care, visit www.planetdds.com. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes by following wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.